What is the most ridiculous outburst you have witnessed in court? The defendant yelled F you at the judge and went on the run. I was sitting as a judge pro tem in traffic court. Traffic court can always be entertaining, to say the least. As a judge pro tem, I am a working lawyer who volunteers to sit in traffic court or small claims court once a month. This frees up the real judges to hear important cases. In an afternoon session, I'll have 30 or 40 cases. All of the people who got tickets are waiting their turn in the courtroom for the session. Each traffic court has a clerk and bailiff. The clerk's main job is to keep the pro tem judge from looking like an idiot or making any obvious legal mistakes. The bailiff is there to ensure decorum, mostly by intimidation, I guess. The bailiff that day was a very young woman, about 5'2". Her nightstick came down to mid-calf. The handcuffs appeared huge on her waist, and she just didn't look very intimidating. Yet there she was in a police uniform. Before calling the first case, I usually remind all of the defendants that traffic school is an option up until I call their case. Then it's no longer an option. I explain my courtroom rules that govern each case and the decorum that I expect, while the police officer and the defendants are testifying. The vast majority of cases are speeding and driving solo in the carpool lane. The first case was unusual. The defendant had been ticketed for having an open container of alcohol as a passenger in a car, and the driver had been ticketed for speeding. The police officer told the story in a routine manner. I turned to the defendant to hear a story. His story is that he was holding a party ball, a round container that holds about 10 gallons of beer, a mini cake with a hose and valve in his lap. But it wasn't his ball. It was someone else's ball. He had explained all this to the officer at the time the ticket was issued. Therefore, glancing smugly at the officer, he explained that he obviously wasn't in possession of the open container. His testimony was sufficient to convict him of possession of an open container. So after he finished, I told him I was finding him guilty and finding him $500. I also explained to him that I understood his defense, that the party ball wasn't his. I told him that the law prohibits possession of an open container. Ownership of the container is not part of the offense. He went ballistic. He shouted, ranted, and raged. I let him go for a minute and then called the next case while he was still shouting. He stayed at his table yelling at me, and as he walked out of the court, he yelled F you at me. This engaged the bailiff, who started after him. He ran out of the court with a bailiff clanking handcuffs, weapon, and mid-calf nightstick after him as they both exited the courtroom. I told the somewhat stunned crowd that we would wait for the bailiff to return. Then we heard the sounds of a body thumping and screams of pain. The bailiff returned to the courtroom with the defendant in a wrist lock. He was bleeding all down one side of his face, and his shirt was torn. Apologize to the judge, she demanded. He hideously whined. I'm sorry, I told him. Don't apologize to me. You wasted everybody's time here. Apologize to the entire courtroom. The officer wheeled him around so he could apologize to the entire courtroom. He whimpered several apologies. She then released him. He slung out of the courtroom. Every remaining defendant pleaded guilty that day. After the session was over, I asked the bail of what happened. It turns out that he was running away from her down the hallway, but there were two police officers waiting to be called as witnesses. In traffic court, they saw him in the bailiff in hot pursuit. One of the officers put his foot out and tripped the defendant as he ran by. As the defendant fell, he scraped his face on the jagged stone walls of the courthouse hallway and tore his shirt. The bailiff picked him up and frog marched him into the courtroom looking like he had been thoroughly beaten up.